You've walked into a casino, told yourself you'd play for 20 minutes, and left 3 hours later, a few $100s lighter, with genuinely no idea where the time went. You blamed the free drinks, the lack of clocks, maybe just bad luck. But there's a real, documented scent that some casino floors pump through the air vents, specifically, quietly, on purpose, and researchers found it can push gambling revenue up by nearly half. Nobody in that room notices anything different about the air. Their brain just quietly starts saying yes more often. And that's honestly one of the tamer examples. Later in this video, I'm going to show you a smell that governments have actually researched to make crowds physically unable to stay in a room. Not because it hurts them, because their own body overrides the decision to stand still. By the end of the next 15 minutes, you're going to understand exactly why smell has this kind of power over you. And once you see it, you're going to start noticing it everywhere. Your favorite store, your favorite hotel, possibly your own living room. Let's get into it. Here's the thing that makes smell different from every other sense you have. And it's not a metaphor, it's actual neuroanatomy. We'll get into the why properly in a minute, because it explains everything else in this video. We're going to walk through real cases, a mall experiment that made total strangers more likely to help each other, a Las Vegas casino study with an actual dollar figure attached to it, an airline that trademarked its own signature smell, and yes, that government crowd control research I mentioned. Then I'll show you the honest, slightly less exciting truth about pheromones, because most of what you've heard about them is marketing, not science. Here's the part almost no one talks about, though. Once you understand the mechanism, you can start using it on purpose, for yourself. That's where we'll end up. Picture this. You're walking through a shopping mall. Somewhere nearby, a bakery or a coffee stand is pumping out that warm, sugary cinnamon bread smell. A few feet ahead of you, a stranger drops a folder and papers scatter across the floor. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Whether you stop and help that stranger is, statistically, partly being decided by that cinnamon smell, not your character. A psychologist named Robert Barron actually tested this in real shopping malls. Near pleasant food smells, baking cookies, coffee, people were significantly more likely to help a stranger, making change, picking up dropped items, answering a random question. Move them a few hundred feet away, near a neutral-smelling store, and that willingness to help dropped off. Nobody in that mall felt manipulated. Nobody noticed the smell was even doing anything. Their mood just quietly lifted, and a slightly better mood makes you a slightly more agreeable, more cooperative person, for a few minutes, without you ever clocking why. And that's genuinely one of the gentlest examples of this effect. It gets a lot more deliberate once companies figured out the same trick works on your wallet, not just your willingness to help a stranger. Here's why smell gets away with all of this when your other senses don't, and it's the single most important thing to understand in this whole video. Everything you see and hear first passes through a part of your brain called the thalamus. Think of it as a checkpoint, a filter that sorts and processes information before handing it off. Smell doesn't go through that checkpoint. At all. The signal from your nose runs almost directly into the amygdala, which handles emotion, and the hippocampus, which handles memory. That's not a small detail. That means a smell can trigger an emotional reaction and a memory before the rational, analytical part of your brain even knows what's happening. This is also exactly why a random smell, your grandmother's perfume, a specific sunscreen, a certain laundry detergent, can instantly transport you back to a memory so vivid it feels physical, faster and more intensely than a photo or a song ever could. Psychologists actually have a name for this involuntary memory jolt. It's called the Proust phenomenon, named after the writer who famously described it happening to him. So now you know the mechanism. Emotion and memory, activated before logic even gets a vote. Now watch what happens when a company designs a smell on purpose, with that exact backdoor in mind. In 1990, a researcher named Dr. Alan Hirsch ran a deceptively simple experiment. He set up two identical rooms with the exact same pair of Nike sneakers on display. Same lighting, same layout, same shoes. The only difference: one room had a faint floral scent pumped in. The other had none. Participants walked through both rooms and were asked which pair of shoes they'd rather buy and how much they'd pay for them. The overwhelming majority chose the shoes in the scented room. Not because the shoes were different. They were the exact same shoes. Something about the air in that room made people rate the product itself as more appealing and made them willing to pay more for it. That single, slightly odd experiment quietly kicked off an entire industry: scent marketing. And it goes way further than sneakers. But wait, this gets a lot bigger when you move from a small research room to an entire casino floor with real money on the line. Remember that casino I mentioned at the very start? Here's the actual number. Hirsch, the same researcher from the shoe study, ran a follow-up experiment in an actual working Las Vegas casino. On some days, a pleasant scent was released near a section of slot machines. On other days, that same section had no scent at all. Everything else, the machines, the lighting, the layout, stayed identical. On the scented days, gambling revenue in that section jumped by roughly 45% compared to the unscented days. Same machines, same odds, same people walking in off the same street. The only variable that changed was the air. Casinos have famously spent decades engineering an environment where you lose track of time. No clocks, no windows, free-flowing drinks. Turns out, the air itself might be one of the most effective tools they have, and it's also the one you're least likely to ever suspect. Here's the part that should genuinely bother you a little. This isn't just casinos anymore. Quick pause, because here's where we are so far. Smell has a direct line to your emotions and memory, bypassing the logical part of your brain almost entirely. That's not a theory. It's how your nervous system is wired. And companies have known this and used it deliberately for decades. Stick with me, because it gets a lot stranger than shoe stores and slot machines. Some companies didn't just want you to buy once. They wanted you to feel an emotional attachment strong enough that you'd recognize their brand with your eyes closed. One major airline actually trademarked its own signature scent, a specific floral fragrance infused into the hot towels handed out at the start of every flight, worn as perfume by the flight attendants, and even lightly present in the cabin air itself. Every single flight, the same invisible signal. A well-known hotel chain does something similar. A specific white tea scent piped through the lobby of every property worldwide, so that walking into any one of their hotels, in any country, triggers the same instant, subconscious sense of familiarity. Some retail clothing brands go even further, keeping their signature cologne so strong in store that you can often identify the brand from outside, before you even see a single logo. Here's why this actually works long term, and it loops right back to that hippocampus we talked about earlier. Repetition plus emotion equals a memory association that fires automatically. After enough exposures, that specific smell doesn't just remind you of the brand. Your brain starts to associate it with comfort, familiarity, even trust, without you ever consciously deciding to feel that way. That's the branding side. But there's a much darker and honestly much less proven corner of this whole topic that you've probably heard more hype about than actual science. Most people get this next part completely wrong, so let's clear it up. You've probably seen pheromone perfumes and colognes marketed with the promise that a few sprays will make people around you instantly more attracted, more trusting, more compliant. Essentially, chemical mind control in a bottle. Here's the honest version. While insects and many animals clearly use pheromones to trigger specific, automatic behaviors, the scientific evidence for humans having anything close to that same system remains genuinely contested. Some studies on specific compounds found in sweat have shown small shifts in mood or attention in controlled lab settings. Interesting, but nowhere near the instantly irresistible claims stamped on the packaging. So no, there isn't a secret spray that makes people obey you. But that twist actually makes everything we've already covered more unsettling, not less. You don't need some exotic, undiscovered chemical to influence behavior at scale. Ordinary, legal, easily available scents, cinnamon, florals, citrus, are already doing measurable work on real people, in real casinos, real stores, real hotels, every single day. No secret ingredient required. Which brings us to the smell you really should be paying attention to, the one that isn't sold in a bottle at all. Here's where this stops being about spending an extra $20 and starts being about something a lot more serious. Researchers, in projects connected to defense and law enforcement funding, have spent real time and real money developing what are called malodorants, deliberately engineered smells designed to be so intensely, universally repulsive that people physically cannot stay in a space where they're released. Some versions have actually been used for crowd control and dispersal, sprayed from vehicles at demonstrations, designed to clear an area within minutes, without a single physical touch. Nobody is grabbed, nobody is pushed. Their own body simply overrides the decision to stay, because the smell triggers something closer to a disgust reflex than a rational choice. That's the closest real-world example to the title of this video. Not hypnosis, not literal mind control, just a smell precise enough to make your body act before your conscious mind gets a say. The exact same mechanism as the bakery, the shoe store, and the casino. Just aimed at a completely different outcome. And here's one final layer that ties this whole thing together, because it's not just about being manipulated by other people's smells. You can, unconsciously, be shaped by your own environment without anyone engineering anything at all. A study on ambient citrus scent found that people in a lightly citrus-scented room kept their immediate surroundings noticeably tidier than people in an unscented room, without any of them realizing the smell had anything to do with it. Nobody told them to clean up. Their behavior just quietly shifted to match the environment. So here's what I want you to actually take from all of this. First, smell has a direct line to your emotions and memory that completely skips your rational brain. That's not a theory, that's basic neuroanatomy. Second, businesses, and in some cases governments, have known this for decades and use it deliberately, whether that's a casino floor, a hotel lobby, or a trademarked airline scent. And third, the instant chemical mind control version of this you've probably seen marketed doesn't really hold up. The mundane version is the one that actually works on you, every day, and that's exactly why it's so easy to miss. Here's one thing you can actually do with this today. Pick one scent, a specific candle, a specific soap, a specific coffee, and only use it during focused work, or only during your morning routine. Give it a few weeks. You're essentially building your own signature scent, the same trick the airlines and hotels use, except this time you're the one deciding what it gets attached to. So tell me, now that you know the mechanism, can you think of a store, a hotel, or even a specific person whose smell you associate with a very specific feeling? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know what shows up most.